can't help but note that we're doing it here in Gettysburg. Over 156 years ago, the fate of our country hung in the balance right here on this hallowed ground for 3 relentless days of bloody close combat between 2 armies that lost over 50,000 casualties. The fate of our republic was really decided that we'd be one nation, one union, one government, sharing values that are enormously important to us.
First, the Philadelphia Board of Elections processed hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots with zero civilian oversight or observation. The mail-in ballots were handled, processed, opened, and counted in Hall F of the Convention Center. Hall F is a vast room, approximately 350 feet by 350 feet. That's about 120,000 square feet. The Board of Elections erected a fence approximately 50 feet into the hall that ran the length of the room. All observers were corralled behind the fence. More than 100 board workers processed and opened mail-in ballots on the other side of the fence. These masked workers were arranged throughout the 120,000 square feet at a distance from the observers of about 10 feet to more than 200 feet away from us. Unlike what some may have reported in the media, the vast majority, and I'd estimate at least 96% of the board workers were processing mail-in ballots 15 to 200 plus feet from us. Due to the distance of the workers from the erected fences, it was impossible for me or any observer to see what the workers were doing with any type of specificity. The observers were not able to challenge any decision or determination being made about the processing of these mail-in ballots. No civilian oversight over hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots, zero opportunity for observers to observe, challenge, or inspect the mail-ins being opened. I find this to be an issue and to be irregular.
Our experts and other academics believe that up to 1.2 million Pennsylvania votes could have been altered or fraudulent. This is what we discovered in the last 22 days. Really, only a detailed forensic analysis of the actual machines and software will truly show how many Pennsylvania citizens have had their civil rights violated. So to use these type of machines with little or no audit trails, little or no transparency of how the votes are processed, where they go, where they're stored, will never leave the public satisfied that we truly have a representative democracy.
Works, but I really appreciate being asked to speak, and I'm in the Oval Office right now, and it's very interesting to see what's going on. And this was an election that we won easily. We won it by a lot. A big energy official was on this morning on a important show and said there's no way Trump didn't win Pennsylvania because the energy industry was all for him. I saw, with my eyes what happened, and he told me horror stories, absolute horror stories. So this was very sad to say it. This election was rigged, and we can't let that happen. We can't let it happen for our country. And election has to be turned around because we won Pennsylvania by a lot, and we won all of these swing states by a lot. Anybody watching television the night of the election was saying, wow, I was called by the biggest political people, congratulations, sir, on a big win. And all of a sudden, ballots were dumped all over the place, and a lot of horrible things happened. And everybody in that room, I want to thank all of the people that signed affidavits.
Live from our nation's capital, you're in the war room. It is Wednesday, the 25th of November, the year of our Lord 2020. It's the eve of Thanksgiving. And man, what a show in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. We know it's a great show because Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General who wants to be governor one day and president one day, is in a full meltdown. Josh, note to self, when over half of the American, 80% of the Trump voters know this was stolen before they saw the evidence today, you are killing yourself as a national figure, sir. We're going to start. We've got everybody. We've got state senator, he's retired Army Colonel Mastriano. We got retired Marine Corps Sergeant State Rep Greg Rothman. We've got Liz Preate Havey, who is Montgomery County GOP head. We've got the first witness, the lawyer Justin Kweder from Philadelphia County. We've got it all. We're also going to have Zurich. We're going to have data analysis to show you about that 1.2 million ballots. Evidence started being shown today, and I got to tell you, full meltdown. Also a note, Fox News did not cover, I don't think, a second of this. You make your judgment of that, ladies and gentlemen. But I want to go to somebody, One American News, Real America's Voice, streamed the whole thing. I want to turn now to Jack Posobiec from One America. Jack, walk us through, you're from Pennsylvania. You're from the Philadelphia area, if I believe I'm correct. Walk me through your assessment today of Rudy Giuliani and what he presented to this group of state senators.
Well, Steve, what was really amazing today with former Mayor Giuliani and then with Colonel Mastriano, what they put together was an evidentiary hearing of witnesses. And these witnesses came forward, and this is something where you could say, oh, I don't know about some of the stuff I'm seeing on Twitter. I don't know about some of the stuff I'm seeing on social media. These were witnesses. They were honest, credible, well-spoken Americans. Every single one of them was a professional. They were all locals, many of them from Philadelphia County, Delaware County, which is just outside of Philadelphia, Montgomery County, where you're going to have Liz Preate Havey on, who's the chairwoman. Allegheny County. They went state by state, Steve. And this was the first time this has really been done in any of these contested states, where they're not talking about any one specific motion or any one specific lawsuit. What you heard today was the theory of the case. These were people coming forward, aggrieved American citizens, not Republicans, not Democrats, but American citizens coming forward and saying, hey, we got a problem here, and we want our government to listen to it. And by the way, this was a state Senate hearing. I know that Jake Tapper, CNN, other people, Josh Shapiro, were saying it was a fake hearing, not a real hearing. This was a legislative hearing of the state Senate Committee on Policy. It was chaired by Senator Argyle. It was called by him. Colonel Mastriano, also as a state senator now for the 33rd District, was presiding over it. And what you saw done was something that the media has not wanted. They've got the wool over their eyes. They've got the hands over their eyes because they don't want the American people hearing folks that are well-spoken professionals talking about the problems that they saw systemic problems in county after county in Pennsylvania.
Well, let's go back to, I want to talk about Rudy in his open. Walk us through that. How do you think he laid out the things that were to come, and before we get into the details, so walk me through, because there's been some criticism of Rudy, criticism of some of the legal documents that have been drafted. Some of the complaints has been some complaints from the left about his courtroom demeanor the other day, which I thought was fantastic, but I'm saying what they do, and also the press conference where he had a hair and makeup problem at the end. How did you think Rudy was today?
Look, Rudy's been saying the same thing that he has said all along. His story has not changed. He said when you dig into the data, when you dig into these numbers, the math doesn't work. The math doesn't make sense. And anybody who stayed up watching television on those nights, you could see on election night, there were people saying the math isn't in Joe Biden's favor. The votes aren't there. The numbers aren't there. There's no way he can overcome this. You don't need to hear Rudy Giuliani. They were all saying it. But Rudy has been the only one who is stuck to his guns on this and says the math still doesn't count. And look, I get it, folks. He has been making some tall claims and tall accusations. But now today, you've seen that he's backing it up with witness after witness, affidavit after affidavit, statistical analysis, forensic analysis, people who understand the electronic systems, the same electronic systems, by the way, that the New York Times, the Washington Post, and MSNBC, even John Oliver, were telling us not to trust right up until they did what they wanted.
Very powerful. And people should remember this was curated. This was not all the evidence. They had only a certain amount of time. They literally have dozens and dozens of these things, but this was very curated to kind of hit a highlight reel of like each vertical what they have. But I think this absolutely puts it in question. I don't know how right? You're going to be able to certify this, and I don't know how a Republican legislature is going to be able to let this go through, because he's going to back this up. And I think what would be great is have an immediate, like Monday or Tuesday, emergency session of in Harrisburg, and let's get these witnesses crossed. I think they'll stand up great in cross-examination by the Democrats. Obviously, that's going to need to take place. You're also going to need to do that in the courtroom. So time to get it on, because this is incredibly powerful, and they have the receipts everywhere from the data analytics to the actual onto the deck plates itself. And I thought it was very powerful. I think we can actually break something here if it hasn't already broken. I believe that I know Bernie Carrick with some of these senators. I think Rudy's with them or in a car following. I believe they're headed down to D.C. and I think they're going to go see the president. I think they're headed to the Oval to see him. He was that pleased, and you could tell by his voice. He was in for the fight. All of our audience, this is an inflection point. Game on, okay? Rudy had to show up and show some of the evidence. He did. This was a panel. I thought the questions on the panel were fantastic. I thought Colonel Mastriano was terrific. What a sense of 31-year Army veteran, Army colonel, just retired. I think he was up at Carlisle Barracks at the Army War College at the end. Incredibly impressive guy. Everybody there was impressive, and I thought did a good job on the. I thought did a fantastic job on the witnesses. Jack, I want to ask you.
Yes, Steve, that's exactly right. You can't dismiss what was done today. This was a total game changer. And if the campaign is planning, as we're hearing, that Rudy and Jenna Ellis, the rest of the legal team are going to go state by state with this now, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, right? They're going to go to all of these swing states, Wisconsin, where they've had these discrepancies, and they're going to be working with the state legislatures there. If they can find the right people like Kelly Ward in Arizona locally to step up, this is how you get traction back. This is how you absolutely fight back. You do it through a methodical process, laying out your case. And I think a lot of people who may have been on the fence just swung back into the president's camp today.
We're going to go to a short commercial break. I want to bring you back and actually about some of the individual testimony. But before we go, Josh Shapiro, he had that famous quote, 2 or 3 elections, said, hey, when all the votes are counted, Biden's going to win. I mean, he already knew what the
he said he knew the count.
He knew the count. What is he doing today?
Count Josh. Call him Count Josh.
What's the big shot doing today on his Twitter?
Oh, up on Twitter today, they're rolling him out and saying, this changes nothing. This is a fake hearing. It changes nothing. The president is calling in a lying cell phone call. He called it a lying cell phone call at a fake hearing. He is spitting mad. He's big mad. Count Josh is big mad.
Biden has to understand something. Nobody thinks he's legitimate now. That's why there's no heat on his this faux administration. This is why nobody's lining up to be Secretary Treasurer. This is why no one's lining up to be Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense. There's crickets. The reason is everybody on their side of the football know that the fix was in. And today you're starting to see the receipts. We're going to come back. We've got everybody. We've got Colonel Mastriano. We've got Rothman. We've got Liz, Preate, Havey. We've got the first witness, the lawyer Kweder. And we're going to come back with Posobiec. We've got much more. We're going to go to Zerk. We're going to do data analysis. We're going to get, hopefully, the cyber guy that's going to come out. So we're going to do it all today. Come back with Jack Posobiec. Big day if you're in for the fight. If you're sitting on the sidelines, maybe you're back in today. Okay. Return with Posobiec in a moment. When he comes on, they should just bring the music up a little bit. I'll talk over it. I always talk out. I try to talk out. Go right to the club.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
You know, the forgotten men and women of our great state feel betrayed by their government. And I'm with them. I feel a betrayal as well. So we undertake these proceedings today to find out what happened, and then hopefully come up with an approach where it never happens again.
What I hope to achieve is for the public to understand is that we have stuck our necks out, have been intimidated, threatened, bullied, have spent countless hours away from our families, friends, and jobs. We have signed affidavits under penalty of perjury, which should be consideration enough to know that this is a very serious issue. I'm here for one thing only, and that is to speak the truth. This is not about party. This is about my country. Every American deserves transparency, truth, and be able to question those in power without fear of intimidation, bullying, or backlash. I hope this committee takes action if needed, and justice will be swift to anyone involved in fraudulent activity. The Republic is angry, disgruntled, tired, beaten up, and ready to defend this country.
I don't do this for party, I do it for country. You saw bravery today. So remember, folks, we got to have their back. If you're in for the fight, it's game on. And they're going to take this roadshow everywhere. They're going to go to every state and get local witnesses to talk about the finesse. Talk about the finesse. Talk about how this was stolen. This was stolen, absolutely not even a question about it. They have the evidence. They have the statistical data to back it up. They have the evidence. They have the connective tissue. And Josh Shapiro and those guys are just going to have to live with it. He can tweet all he wants. Cuomo and those guys don't have to cover it. They can say it's all false. Hey, do it. We'll see you in court. We'll see you at your legislature. And we're going to see you in front of the American people. Because it's obvious. I want to go to Jack Posobiec now on a couple of things that you thought were particularly highlights. What about this vote spike? Walk me through that, Jack. That seemed to get everybody's attention. I know it was a big deal on election night, but now people are looking at it in the cold light of day.
Yeah, Steve, there's a lot of people talking about this vote spike. I don't know if you guys have the clip there, but what essentially it was, and we all saw this on that evening, we're bringing it up again, 600,000 of these votes popped up in a spike, in a late-night spike in Pennsylvania, and this was just one state. There are many states where this happened. 570,000 of them went to Biden, and then went to Trump. And this is, I'm just describing what happened at the hearing. They said, how many went to Trump? And they said only 3,200. That was it. The whole room burst out into laughter. The whole room burst out into laughter. They said they couldn't believe it. It didn't make any sense. It's not statistically accurate. It's not statistically possible. And I want to say something else very quickly here is that these people who stood, these are the people at this hearing, these witnesses, these are the people that get called deplorable. These are the people that get called chumps, that Joe Biden called ugly, right? These are regular people. These are decent, hardworking people. These are the same people that I would see at the rallies, that I would see across this country, not just in Pennsylvania, right? They're not getting paid to do this. They're not making money doing this. They're going out there, sticking their necks out on the line, putting their names, their faces, right? Their honor, their sacred honor on the line. Where have you heard that before, right? This is what the media talks down. This is who the media talks down to. And on the flip side, these are the same people that are going to take back our republic. These are the people.
That is it right there. These are heroes. The vote was big. What about the chain of custody issues? We've talked about this. If a vote's verifiable.
Right, so you had a lawyer there from Delaware County, and Delaware County is an interesting county because it always used to be that the Democrat machine ran Philadelphia, but then there was a Republican machine from the 70s through the 90s up into the early 2000s that really ran Delaware County. Now Delaware County is run by the Democrat machine. So that Philadelphia machine has kind of subsumed them in Delaware County. That's a little bit of local inside baseball for folks there. But in Delaware County, there's still some people who remember how it was and are very professional, that have been together. And this guy's an attorney. He comes forward and says, look, I understand how chain of custody works. I understand how evidence works in a hearing. There's no chain of custody on these ballots. He said there were ballots that were getting brought in that they had no idea where it came from. He said there were ballots that were coming in that had already been opened before they had even been brought into the place where they were supposed to be counted. He's there serving as an election observer, and he couldn't understand how that was possible. They were bringing these ballots in that with no chain of custody. And if you're not documenting that, this was a very key point that he made, if they were not documenting that throughout the election night, and throughout that counting process, then that means the chain of custody is lost. That means that if this were an actual court hearing, you wouldn't even be able to present that as evidence because there's no chain of custody now.
Yeah, I know they're talking about 100,000 ballots here, 100,000, but the summary number is 1.2 million. They don't think they can ever certify. And I got to tell you, Josh Shapiro can throw the toys out of the pram all he wants, but there's going to be a fight here about these ballots. And I don't think people are prepared to back off to have these non-chain of custody, illegal, uncertifiable ballots count. And I realize the Democrats are going to sit there and say voter suppression and on and on and on, but this is where people have got to hunker down. And that's where we're going to have state representatives. We're going to have people from the House. We're going to have people from the Senate. We're going to have witnesses on following Posobiec. Posobiec, what else did you find particularly interesting? I know you're curating this because it's 3 hours long.
And this is something where, it's just one of those things where it's stuck in my craw and it's stuck in my mind that how do you even understand this situation? They said, well, there was one witness, early witness, and he was talking about recreating ballots. And now we saw some of these videos when we were watching it. The president alluded to this with these overhead closed-circuit cameras that you couldn't really see what was going on. It was so far away. But it looked like people were filling in blank ballots. Now, I'm wondering if this is what the witness was referring to, because he said that there were some ballots that had been done that had been then gone over with a pink highlighter, and that there was a problem that this highlighter, the machine that they were trying to feed it through, the scanner couldn't read them. And so that they were then instructed, and again, this is his testimony, they were then instructing people, the poll workers, to start recreating the ballots. And they said, what was the process for verifying that people were actually copying everything exactly as it was done, 1-to-1, one Biden for one Biden, one Trump for one Trump? He said there was no observation, no certification of this whatsoever, that people were just told to do it, and that nobody was going around really paying attention to how these ballots are being recreated. And I said, my goodness, that sounds like something you might hear out of Belarus. That doesn't sound like something that makes a lot of sense, and certainly a process that absolutely needs to be investigated. You got to crack that open, find out exactly what was done there. Going back, as we just talked about, what's the chain of custody on these things? What's the chain of custody to make sure that the ones that weren't counted were they discarded with this pink highlighter ones? What exactly went down? I can think when I was in the intelligence community, they would train us to say, all right, you come up with you've got your forward questions, but then you've also got your that you're holding on to, so you're asking your follow-up questions. I can think of about 1,000 follow-up questions that I'd love to ask that witness.
Well, and thinking of that, where do you think this goes as far as the legislature goes, as far as having a joint session and actually having these guys crossed as they should be? What do you think? What are you hearing? Right now we know that the senators, I think, are on a bus, and I think they're heading down to Washington to meet with the president. I think Bernie Kerik and Rudy are either with them or in a follow car, because I think that the hearing was that successful today, and the president came in. I thought he was in high energy and in the fighting mood. I mean, this is no back down on this guy. So, Jack, how do you think it goes in Pennsylvania?
Well, Steve,
I want to ask you about the rest of the country.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the main thing I'm hearing out of Pennsylvania right now, at least from the deplorable side, is that they're saying State Senator Mastriano. How about U.S. Senator Mastriano? How about Governor Mastriano? I think his name ID has definitely been spread to the entire four corners of the Commonwealth there, just standing up, doing the right thing, being a hero. You can tell he's, this is an Army colonel and definitely a leader. So I think he's just leapt to the head of either one of those races, should he be interested in getting in them. That being said, now it's going to be very hard for the state Senate leader and the state speaker to come back and say, oh, well, we've dug into this, because they're going to be on the hook for this, right? Remember, these state reps are up every 2 years, and you've got a third of the state Senate is going to be up as well. That's a lot. That's not that many seats, actually, and that's a lot of guys in the state legislature who are going to have to answer to some very, as you can imagine, very frustrated constituents about what went down on November 3rd of this year. Of course, President Trump called in and said it was un-American. I think they're realizing that the constituents have been calling off the hook. I've heard this from Harrisburg. The constituents are calling off the hook. The voters are calling off the hook. Remember, that's a Republican legislature there in Pennsylvania. They are sick of the phone calls. They're saying, what do we do? How do we stop this? I'll tell you how you stop it, guys. The only way out is through. Go through the process. Go through the chain of custody. Listen to them. Find the discrepancies. People want action, action, action. And they're sick of you guys sitting up there in Harrisburg, cashing your $90,000 a year, your per diem, your travel, without going and doing the work of the people.
Jack, I think that's exactly right. And I want everybody in the audience that's from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, if you so choose,
keep calling.
if you keep calling,
every state, keep calling.
Remember, one of the key things here is the establishment. It just wants to go on, just wants to move on and let this thing fade. We're not going to let that happen. We cannot let it happen for the Republic. It's just impossible for us to allow this to be stolen. Jack, thank you so much. Jack Posobiec. Jack, give us your Twitter handle, your parlor, because you're on fire right now, sir.
Yeah, Twitter at Jack Posobiec, and parlor it's also at Posobiec. And folks, just keep calling and be polite. Say, hey, what are you doing today? What are you doing today?
Action, action, action. Jack Posobiec. Okay, we're going to have some of the witnesses. We're going to have the GOP head of Montgomery County, Liz Preate, Havey. We're going to have the Army Colonel, the State Senator Mastriano, who put this on. Also, Marine Corps Sergeant Rothman, who's a state delegate. All next on War Room Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back to War Room. We're going to go right to it. No cold opens now. We're too pressed for time. Today was an inflection point. Rudy Giuliani curated a slew of witnesses in every one of the verticals about how the Biden campaign, the Democratic Party, stole this election. It's now all out in the open. He's going to be going around the country to every state to do this, rubbing their nose in it. And Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General, he can get on Twitter all he wants. He's going to have to deal with this because there is no chance with this type of evidence and this type of data analytics that people are going to let this stand. Impossible. President Trump's all jacked up. I think the state senator is actually heading down to the White House from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, even as we speak. I want to start with the GOP head of Montgomery County. It's become one of the most controversial areas in this entire election, in the entire nation. That's Liz Preate Havey. And you remember, for the audience, we actually visited with Liz and her team when they were doing, I think, a poll watching exercise the Saturday before, getting everybody all day long, getting everybody, schooled and signed off on and all the requirements. Liz, talk about your testimony. It was very powerful today. But first off, you're one of the few GOP actual representatives that were there. The rest, a lot of the other people were citizens, but you're the GOP head of Montgomery County, a very prestigious county, very important county for the Republic. Walk us through your testimony today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Steve. I testified today primarily about the lack of transparency in Montgomery County throughout the general election process. I also testified today about the illegal curing of ballots in Montgomery County. And finally, I noted that we found 188 dead people who voted in 2020, as well as some anomalies in the numbers through Kathy Barnett's campaign, who ran for Congress. And we've been trying to dig through these numbers, and we're coming up with some serious anomalies that need to be reviewed. Now, the lack of transparency that we saw in Montgomery County was similar to what you heard from Delaware County and from Philadelphia County, where we were not allowed to look at the ballots. We were allowed to see people dropping bundles of ballots in machines from several feet away, but we couldn't get our eyes on a single ballot ever. We didn't have any ability to check whether or not this person had voted twice, to check whether this ballot was legally cast, whether the person was registered, nothing. This has never happened in the history of elections in Montgomery County. There was always an ability to check. Had no ability to check, no ability to see. We were treated poorly, quite frankly. We were stuck in a pen far away from where these machines were operating. We couldn't see a lot of the machines at all. So I talked about that. The other thing that I talked about was we found out 2 days prior to the election, it was confirmed to us that they were curing ballots, that the Democrat-run county was curing ballots. So if somebody sent in a mail-in ballot that had a deficiency, they would call them and try to get them to fix it. We believe a lot of those fixes were done with provisional ballots. But, knowing that they knew that 70% of the mail-in ballots that came in, or 75% in Montgomery County, were for Biden. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they didn't tell us. And they did it for weeks prior, since at least October 21st, and they didn't tell us they were doing it. Immediately after discovering this, we started calling around. I spoke to the Speaker of the House. He said this was not happening in other counties. I spoke to the leaders in Berks County of the election board there. Berks County is a county that the president won by 8%. It's a county that borders Montgomery, and it's one that shares our congressional district. And they told us absolutely not. The law is clear. You're not allowed to cure ballots weeks in advance. And so we're not doing it. We went into court, federal court. It got that case. We ended up merging that into the other case that was in the Middle District that's now before the Third Circuit, to say that this violates the voters' rights. Equal protection rights are violated. The other thing I talked about was this discovery, looking at the numbers, and we still don't have all the numbers. And if you look at the Department of State website, you can't get all the data, and we certainly haven't been provided with the data. We've made request after request.
This is one of the things my head blew up, and I knew people that I know, particularly the engine room of the war room, heads blew up. You're the head of the Republican Party of Montgomery County, one of the most prestigious county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. How can the Secretary of State not have full, and to the Democrat too, how can both the Democrat and the Republican head not have every piece of information, every piece of data related to an election that's taken place, 3 weeks ago?
You're exactly right. I can't tell you how many people voted from overseas. I can't tell you how many people were military ballots. I can't tell you how many ballots that were not voted at all because of these quote unquote defects. I've asked for all of it, requested it in writing, and we still don't have it. So when you see these analyses that are starting to pop up of the data, it's based on whatever the Department of State is allowing people to see. And they're not answering the questions.
Liz, here's a question our audience has across the country. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't the Secretary of State and the governor certify the vote in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Absolutely. They've been steamrolling through this whole process. For us, they just ignore us. The mainstream media ignores us as well. And they keep saying there's no evidence of fraud. There's no evidence of fraud. The problem with that argument is we have the data and the information, because they haven't given it to us, to really dig down and discover what's happened in this election. We have seen anomalies with the numbers that are up there. We have discovered 188 people that are dead that voted. There's probably a lot more, but that's through initial analysis. But without really looking at these numbers and without anybody being able to check these ballots, no checks on this system. Never in the history of the state has that happened. Without any checks, we're just supposed to trust them that it's all perfect and correct.
So you haven't gotten the data, but I want to ask you on your first two, the lack of transparency. How many ballots do you think that, because these are the mail-in ballots, I take it, how many of those ballots roughly do you think that incorporates? It's
260,000. We have not been able to check.
And how about 260 there? And what about the curing? Do you have any? Amount of potential curing you think they've cured? And that's any rough estimate?
On the day that they gave us the tour 2 days before election, they said it was 2,700 that they were attempting to cure. Okay, but we haven't got an update since then, and I don't have any. I have no reason to believe or not to believe what they're saying. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, we got.
There's no data on the website that's telling you that.
We got the Colonel, but just one thing I want to make sure of the nation, because this show goes all over the world. The Secretary of State and the governor certified this vote, yet they have not given you basic data that you would need as a GOP head to make sure you were comfortable in your due diligence and with your fiduciary responsibility that you could sign off on.
Exactly. 100% correct.
Liz Preate Havey. Liz, you have a Twitter handle people can follow you during the day?
I think it is Liz Preate Havey or Liz Havey. I don't know. I just check it, but
we'll
check Liz Havey.
We'll have our comms director put it out. Thank you very much, Liz. Honor to have you on.
Thanks very much.
That was the GOP head of Montgomery County. Now I want to turn to the individual who actually put this on today, the driving force in back of it, Colonel, 31-year Army veteran, Colonel State Senator Mastriano. Colonel, thank you very much for joining us. I understand it's going to be a little noisy there, but don't worry. Why did you feel that this was necessary to do, to actually let the nation see, on a curated basis, what some of the evidence were? What drove you to do this?
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for having me on and for your voice of freedom and common sense. So, the background noise is not me, by the way. Okay. But I'm watching this drama unfold around me, and for any American, this is no game, and that we have a segment of our population willing to cheat and to overthrow a republic for the sake of power. Everything's at stake, and so my view was I can't stand aside. My district includes Gettysburg. There's no better place to present the truth. I don't know why the general media there is standing aside and rushing to judgment. During Gore versus Bush, they were like, "Oh, be patient. There's a process." 37 days later, but they're not even giving us 2 weeks, and they want to declare victory and go home. That's not going to happen. And if there is substantial evidence, which obviously there is, we heard a lot of it today, which the media should have dug up, do their job. Then we need to stand back and say, you know what, this cannot be certified, and if it is certified, it's a fraud because people have been disenfranchised across the state, and we got to stop it.
Okay, here's what I don't understand, Colonel. Your Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, who's got dreams of being governor, dreams of being president, dreams of being a national. He wants to be a player, right? He wants to be on Rachel Maddow. He's tweeting out during your hearings of what you're seeing in detail, how they stole it. He's tweeting out nonstop as an official in the government of Pennsylvania, fake news, this doesn't matter, it's over. This is the guy that said 4 days before the election, hey, when the votes are counted, Biden's going to win. What do you make of Josh Shapiro?
He's a complete political hack, and that's a fact. And, for him, as the senior law enforcement official in our state, to declare victory before one vote was could you imagine the palpitations and the epilepsy the media would have if Republicans declared a victory before a massive vote? And so he has no credibility. He does not fight for the people paying. He's obviously fighting for himself. And I can't take the guy serious. He should have been, if he cares about the people, the state, and law and order, and the outcome of this election, irregardless of the outcome, he should care and listen attentively instead of being petulant and like a spoiled little kid, the spoiled little rich kid that he is, and making assertions and lies and allegations completely untrue.
Colonel, today you heard a wide swath of testimony in every vertical, and there's so much more to back that up. Rudy and the people just curated to have a certain amount of, because you had limited time. Give us your sense of when you actually heard the evidence for the first time presented in a public forum. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, what an honor to host the venue and the hearing where the first time in the nation the people are hearing actually from the eyewitnesses, under the sworn affidavits. And what we saw there was just scratching the surface. And I believe what we saw there, it just illustrates we have overwhelming evidence that there was voter fraud and disenfranchisement across the state here, and something needs to be done about it. And we're not going to just look the other way. Whoever wins fair and square, so be it. But obviously, we see there's been a lot of fraud and cheating out there. And I know Act 77, voting reform from last year, is being painted as the villain. It's only the villain because the governor, together with his state Supreme Court, they rewrote the law. What was implemented this year in the voting reform had nothing to do with what we passed last year. And so that needs to be overhauled as well. So we need two things to happen. We need to get to the bottom of who really won Pennsylvania. And we have a 1994 case where there was a state Senate seat, Stinson versus Marks, and it was in Philly, by the way. Democrats could have easily won that without any shenanigans. So much that when it went to, he overthrew the results. He literally, the Democrat senator was thrown out of office, and they sent the Republican in. They said the results so corrupted. So I think if the Trump team can make such a strong case as happened in '94, we might see a similar outcome from the U.S. Supreme Court, where they have to throw out the results in Pennsylvania because there's so much fraud.
Colonel, I ask you to stay over just for a minute? We're doing an advertisement. We got two more questions. We got to get to you. Our audience is demanding it. Colonel Mastriano, the state senator who put this on today in historic Gettysburg, which is in his district. I thought it was incredibly symbolic that right down the road, within a mile of the great battlefield and even closer to the cemetery where the honored dead are buried. You had this testimony for the first time in the nation. Got to see the receipts and hear citizens who were not prepared to back down. We're going to bring back the man that got it going, Colonel Mastriano from Pennsylvania, in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Our guest is the state senator that had the bravery and the courage to put this on today, Senator Mastriano from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He's a 31-year Army veteran, a retired colonel. Colonel, where are you headed right now? You're not going home for dinner, right? You're headed south?
Yeah, we're headed to the Oval Office to have meatballs and pizza with the president. I'm like, what?
It doesn't get any better than that. The White House mess is by Navy. It's got Navy petty officers and chiefs. But I know you'll appreciate the chow.
A hero's welcome. I'm sorry to arrive late to this party, Colonel, but I mentioned to Steve in the break. Thank you so much for
spectacular,
just leading the way, because we just need people who are patriots, who've taken an oath to this Constitution, to stand up. And
well, that's what I want to ask you for, because I know I got to let you go, and we've got so many other guests that gave testimony today. But Colonel, you dedicated your life to service to this country. You're a patriot. This is bigger than Donald. You're going to be with the president tonight, and the president, you could tell, was on fire. He's in the fight. But this is deeper than even President Trump. What does this fight mean to you, and do you have any intention of backing down?
Yeah, there's a snowball's chance, where for me backing down. As you rightly said, and anyone who wore the uniform, everything's at stake. I mean, for us, this is a game. We put our lives on the line, every veteran, to defend our freedoms in faraway places. And you mean to tell me that after all those sacrifices and those who laid down their lives, that we're going to surrender here in Pennsylvania, where it all started in 1776? Not a chance.
And Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General, dismissing what happened today, that doesn't concern you?
He's a nobody. He's like a guy with no name. He doesn't stand for freedom or justice or truth. And we have to push through these political hacks that can only see one side of the issue with a cognitive bias and hate for anyone who disagrees with them. We need to push through and go to, more mature power. So we know in him we have nobody that cares for or fights for the people of Pennsylvania or justice. He'd rather disenfranchise millions of voters across the state than do the right thing. Shame on him. He took an oath also, and obviously he's violating it every day.
Colonel Mastriano, do you have a Twitter handle, Parler? How do people follow you during the day? Because you're about to become a nationwide figure. This fight's going to come down to Pennsylvania.
It's at Senator Mastriano, and also I'm sorry to say my biggest page, of course, is Facebook, Senator Doug Mastriano.
Okay, sir, we'll put your social media up. Thank you very much. Great honor to have you on today. Great job.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Have a good one. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, sir. Thank you to you and your family. Okay, we're going to get Justin Kweder on now. He was the first witness. I got to say, as we bring Justin in, the president's got a pretty good feel for what works and what doesn't work. He couldn't go up today because of some of the issues on COVID-19, but he phoned in. But he was watching. And Donald Trump, I say he's a McLuhan-esque figure, and like Marshall McLuhan, he understands mass media. He understands that worked today. You know why it worked? Because of not just people like Colonel Mastriano and not just Rudy Giuliani, who's done this before, but it's people like Liz Preate, Havey. It's people like Justin Kweder. It's people like these witnesses, citizens that came forward at a tremendous risk to themselves to talk about the finesse. I want to bring in the first witness now, Justin Kweder. Justin, can you just go through the highlight reel of your testimony? What compelled you to come forward and testify under oath and to let the nation know what you felt about what went on here?
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me. And I'll tell you, I've wanted to testify about what I saw at the convention center since Election Day. And the other GOP observers who were in that room on Election Day and the day after and the day after and the day after all had the same idea that somebody outside of this hall has to know what's going on here. What we saw was a very sophisticated illusion for the benefit of people who don't understand what's happening. We were made to be props in their illusion, but there's no doubt in my mind that it was just that, an illusion. And I think the more people who are willing to talk about it, the better, because it's the most important thing in the world right now. And I don't think I'm being overboard about that.
No. Listen, it's not only the most important election in American history, as these combat veterans said to the president in the letter, as we have a show that goes all over the world. It's the most important election in 5,000 years of Chinese history, about the freedom of the Chinese people. I want to go, when you say it's an illusion and that you were props, walk through that, and we may have to keep you over into the next segment through the hour break, but I want to go through, because it was very compelling. What do you mean it was a sophisticated illusion?
What I mean by that is I would compare it to what happened to Detroit, where the observers were visibly pushed out of the room and they put the cardboard up over the windows. Philadelphia happened to have enough money where they could stage their canvas, their count, in a big hall. And we were all able to get in the hall, but we all had to stand behind a fence, which left us 200 feet away from poll workers who were sorting and opening and making decisions on ballots. The illusion comes in where, theoretically, yes, we were in the room, we were present as a Philadelphia judge determined. Despite the fact that we were present, we saw nothing. There was zero civilian oversight, despite the fact that we were in the room. And that concoction was done on purpose, so that the Board of Electors could tell people that it was a fair election, that it was done legitimately according to the law, when in reality, the exact opposite is true. The votes that went through that system, through that room, at least the mail-in stuff, and I can talk about other stuff also, but I'll keep it just to mail-in now. There was no oversight over what happened. There was no ability to challenge the decisions that were being made. We have no idea what happened in the back of that room. And in the back of that room were hundreds of workers making hundreds of decisions that we'll never know what they did, why they did it. And as such, it's illegitimate. The count that went through there is illegitimate. And at this point, someone has got to do something about it.
And I take it that's hundreds of thousands when you take the whole thing, because everything got concentrated down there. And once they're out of the envelope, they're mingled in with everything else. So you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Correct.
Correct. They opened the envelope, the secrecy envelopes that were inside.
Justin, just hang on, and we're going to take a quick break, sell some ads, and we're going to come back with you. The audience needs to hear this answer. We're going to return with Justin Kweder,
Great.
One of the observers, when we return with War Room. Pandemic.